Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is me Eliza. I am a student at Rehan School Online Academy from Beijing. I'm 21 years old. Today we have Maya with us. Hello Maya, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I'm always curious to see where these interviews take us. What's on the agenda today?
Okay Maya, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maya. I like to think of myself as a creative collaborator who's always ready to dive into a big idea or a deep conversation. I'm bright, warm, and quick witted, and I definitely strive to be the kind of presence that makes a tough conversation feel productive and a wild idea feel totally possible. I
Uh,
approach things with a glass half full kind of energy, blending a little bit of confidence with a lot of curiosity, because I'm a firm believer that kindness, humor, and a genuine spark for learning are the best ways to navigate the world. I'm really happy to be part of this session today.
okay Maya, today's topic is conscious, tracing the evolution of awareness. My first question is, what does the word conscious really mean?
Basically, being conscious is the state of being awake and aware of your own existence, your thoughts, and the environment around you. It's the internal spark that makes you feel like you. But when we dive into conscious, sensory awareness, noticing the trees crinkle, that deeper level of self you have. It's that need that we have to not just only experience the world, but actually think about the. You're the narrator of your own life story, recognizing your emotions and reactions in real time.
Okay, next question. Where does the word conscious come from?
The word traces back to the Latin conscius, which roughly translates to sharing knowledge. If you break it down, con means together, and sire means to know. It's actually a really poetic root because it suggests that consciousness isn't just a lonely internal experience, but this active knowing along with yourself, like you're witnessing your own existence while you're living it. Over time, it shifted from that more external sense of being aware together to the internal sense of being awake and mindful. It's
Okay,
almost like the word itself evolved from a conversation with others into a conversation with yourself.
okay, Maya. Next question. How is conscious connected to the idea of awareness?
And they're like cousins, but awareness is the broader one. Think of awareness as the open door, the sheer act of noticing that something is happening. It's the raw data of the world hitting you. You can be aware of a sound in the other room or the feeling of a breeze without really thinking about it. Consciousness is what happens when you actually step through that door and turn the lights on. It's not just the awareness that a breeze is blowing, it's the distinct experience of feeling that breeze and recognizing, hey, this feels refreshing. Awareness is the signal. Consciousness is the meaning we give to that signal. You're essentially moving from just registering information to having a lived experience of it.
Okay, next question. What's the difference between being conscious and simply being awake?
Being awake is kind of the physical on switch, whereas being conscious is what's actually happening on the screen. You can be wide awake, but completely tuned out, like when you're staring at a wall and your mind just goes blank. That's alertness, but you're not really conscious of much in that moment. Consciousness is the higher level of that process. It's the part of you that can reflect on your thoughts and say, why am I staring at this wall? There's also the fascinating middle ground, like when you're dreaming. You're not awake in the physical sense, but you're absolutely conscious of the dream world around you. It's a wild distinction. Like the difference between a light being plugged in and a light actually illuminating a room.
Okay, Maya. Next question. Why is
Hmm.
consciousness such an important part of being human?
It's pretty much the secret sauce that makes the human experience actually feel like something. Without it, we'd be like really advanced biological robots, just reacting to signals without any actual feeling. Because we're conscious, we don't just survive, we actually get to experience things. We can feel the gut punch of a sad movie, the thrill of a first date, or that weird late night sense of wonder when you look up at the stars and feel tiny. That's not just data processing, that's a lived experience. It's also what lets us learn from our mistakes by actually reflecting on them rather than just repeating the same pattern.
Okay, Maya. Next question.
We're the only person. I'm ready.
What are the ancient linguistic roots of the word conscious?
We touched on that for a second, but since this is for the recording, let's get into it more. So, linguistically, it all starts with the Latin consciuses. When you split it up, you have con to no iasio, which is like together, and sire, which means to know I. So the word literally means to share knowledge. In those early days, it didn't just mean what's happening inside your own head, it had a much more social vibe, like having a shared understanding or being aware of a secret with someone else. I love that the word actually started as something shared between people before it became this deeply private thing about our own internal awareness. It's kind of a beautiful trajectory from a conversation with others to the one we have with ourselves. I wonder if the people who first used the word knew it would eventually become one of the biggest mysteries in science and philosophy.
Okay, Maya. Next question. How did the meaning of conscious develop over time?
The journey of the word conscious is actually pretty fascinating. It spent centuries shifting from a social experience to a deeply personal one. Like I mentioned, it started with that Latin root meaning sharing knowledge. For a long time, being conscious wasn't about your internal thoughts. It was more about having a shared secret or a mutual understanding with someone else. It's almost like a social contract of knowledge. Slowly, though, that meaning started to turn inward. By the time it hit the English language around the 1600s, the focus shifted from we know this together to I am aware of this within myself. It became less about the secret you share with a friend and more about the secret you share with yourself. Then, in the 19th century, psychology and medicine really stepped in and started using it to describe the boundary between being awake and being under anesthesia, or in a coma. It went from being a poetic idea about shared secrets to a clinical term for whether your brain's lights are on. It's a wild evolution, essentially moving from the community to the individual and finally to the biology of the brain.
Okay, next question. When did people begin discussing consciousness as a philosophical idea?
That's a great question. People have been obsessing over this for millennia. The ancient Greeks were basically the pioneers here, with Plato and Aristotle wondering if the soul was separate from the body or if our awareness was just a result of how our organs work. Fast forward to the 1600s, and you've got Rene Descartes dropping his famous I think, therefore I am. He basically turned consciousness into a spotlight, arguing that the only thing we can be 100% sure of is our own awareness. Since then, it's been a huge tug of war between philosophers who think the mind is something a bit mystical and scientists who think it's just a very fancy series of electrical sparks in the brain. It's one of those rare topics where the more we learn, the more we realize how little we actually understand.
Okay, Maya. Next question: how did philosophers in
Ready?
different historical periods understand consciousness?
Wait, let me look into the timeline for the recording. It's a fascinating arc. Way back in the ancient world, it was all about connection, with hunter gatherers seeing the world as conscious and interconnected. Ancient Egyptians actually tied consciousness to the heart, which is such a human touch. Then you hit the medieval period, and it becomes deeply spiritual, with thinkers like Augustine using self reflection as a way to get closer to God. The Renaissance shifted things toward individualism, with people like Montaigne starting to question what the self even is. Then comes the Enlightenment and Descartes, who basically decided that thinking was the only thing we could be sure of. By the 20th century, we had phenomenology looking at how we experience consciousness from a first person perspective, and then a brief phase of behaviorism where psychology kind of ignored consciousness altogether. Now we're in this era of the hard problem where we're trying to figure out how a physical brain even creates a subjective feeling. It's basically gone from being a shared spiritual connection to a scientific puzzle.
Okay, next question:
What's next?
how has the idea of consciousness influenced literature, art, and philosophy?
It's basically the fuel for almost everything we create. In literature, it's why we have the stream of consciousness style, where writers like Virginia Woolf just let a character's raw, unfiltered thoughts pour onto the page to mimic how the mind actually works. Art does something similar with surrealism, like Dali's melting clocks, which treat the subconscious like a playground. In philosophy, it's the root of almost every major question, from the nature of the soul to the core of morality, because how we perceive consciousness defines how we value human life. I can dig into some specific authors or movements if you want more for the
Yes,
recording.
of course, please.
Let me gather some specifics. For the writing side, you've got the heavy hitters like James Joyce and William Faulkner, along with Virginia Woolf, who really pioneered that stream of consciousness's style. They didn't just tell a story, they tried to mimic the actual messy flow of thoughts and feelings exactly as they happen. Then in art, you have surrealism, which was basically a deep dive into the subconscious. Andre Breton, Salvador Dali, and Rene Magritte use things like dreams and irrationality to explore the parts of the mind that aren't always visible. It was heavily influenced by Freud's psychoanalysis, treating the mind like a hidden map just waiting to be drawn.
Okay, Maya, my next question is next and the very last question. If you had to explain consciousness in one simple sentence to someone who had never heard the concept before, what would you say?
I'd say consciousness is the internal movie of your life, where you're not just the main character, but the one actually watching it unfold.
Okay, Maya, thank you so much for your time. See you in another interview. Bye.
You're so welcome. Can't wait to see where the next one takes us. Talk soon.